Okay, so we're out here testing a new winch on my four-wheeler today. This is an old Arctic Cat 2003. I put a worn winch on it way back when I bought it. I've used the heck out of that winch, but the last couple years it's been giving me some fits. I've taken it apart a couple times trying to figure out what's going on with it. At first I thought it was the solenoid, but it's not. It must be something with the motor, especially when it gets cold, when I use it a lot, snow plowing and that kind of stuff. It's just been giving me a lot of problems. I was about ready to order a new one anyway when these guys reached out to me. I'm sorry I don't remember the name of the company. I'm up here in the woods right now. I remember the box said FIERYRED on it. The name's right here. These guys reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this new product line out. Would you like to try one of our winches? I said, sure. As long as I can give you an honest review of your product, sure, let's go for it. So this is my honest review of the product. Let me go through the installation. This thing took me about 6 or 7 hours to put in. Not really the fault of the manufacturer for the most part. The winch they sent, I think I may have told them something wrong. They sent a 4,500 pound winch. I should have got the 3,500 pound for this machine. The old winch that was on here was a 2,500 pound worn. One quick thing, this is I believe a Chinese brand. The worn that I took off was American made. If that's really important to you, I completely understand. You can turn the video off right now and move on. If it's not such a huge deal, and I don't know if the new worn winches, those little winches, are still made in the US or not, but the one I took off was. Anyway, so getting that 4,500 pound winch to fit in that small area was a little bit of a hassle. I got it to fit, I did some moving around. Now the old winch, I could take the plate, the mounting plate off the machine with the winch attached and just pull it out. This, I mounted it up to it, which was no problem. Now the winch did come with one of the little nuts that you're supposed to run in a bolt and attach it to the mounting plate. The nut was loose. I don't know how it got out of there. There's a little roll pin that holds it in place, but it was out from behind it. Don't have any idea how it got out of there. I'm assuming that's for the mount. And right here. How did that get out of there? Oh, I see. I'll have to figure out how to get that back in there. I had to pop the roll pin out to get that nut back in there. And this caused me a little problem down the road. I'll get to that in just a minute. But putting this thing on the mounting plate on the bench, not a problem. Went together super slick. But then I found out I could not fit that winch in this hole with it mounted. I had to take 2 bolts out, kind of wiggle it up in there with it loose, and then once I got it in there, then I could remount it, which seems like it wouldn't be a problem. But those little nuts that move around, they're kind of free floating. They give you some play, so if your mounting holes are a little bit off, it works pretty good. But that nut, I don't know if it was the same one. It may not have been. But those things gave me such a fit. When it was flat on the bench, not a problem. I can move them around, stick the bolt in, not a problem. Once it gets up in almost a vertical position, those things just want to go to the bottom. And I could not for the life of me get those things lined up. I finally had to take it all back apart, put little wood shims in there, and shim those nuts up to the right height, and then put it all back together. So that caused me a huge headache. That took about 2 hours in itself, trying to get those darn things lined up. I tried every which way possible to get those things to line up. I just couldn't do it. I put a little grease on them so hopefully they would stay there once I moved them in place with an ice pick. That didn't work. Like I said, the only thing I could do was take it all apart, shim it with wood, little tiny wood shims. Then I could get the bolts in. The other issue I had was the wiring harness. The wire was too short for my application. For most applications, I think it would work fine. I just couldn't find a good spot up front here on the machine to mount the controller. So the wiring, the heavy gauge wire is kind of split into 2 lengths. And It would work great if you could mount the controller up towards the front. The wiring would have worked fine. I wanted to mount it back where the old controller was, which was behind the seat. There's not a lot of room back there, first of all, so it was a little cumbersome to get it in there. And once you mount it back there, the wire that they sent was not long enough to reach up to the winch. So I wound up reusing the old wire that I just tore out, put that all back in, wired it up, and it works great. One thing I noticed during the install is the switch. I didn't like the quality of the switch at all that mounts up on the handlebars. Now this is a very generic switch. It's made to fit a lot of different machines, a lot of different applications. So it wasn't a perfect fit. Now the old control or winch switch that was on here was made specifically for this machine. So it fit nice on the handlebar. It looked nice. Everything was for this machine. Now this one, not so much, not at all. It's a generic mount, and the switch itself is very gritty feeling. It feels like a low quality switch. The winch itself looks like it's fairly well made, but that switch, I don't know about that switch. I may try and figure out how to use the old worn switch that was made for this machine and wired into this controller. Now, the other thing that I ran into during the install, if you go by the instructions that are in the material provided, it says to wire the wireless controller. It comes with 2 little wireless remotes, and I'll tell you more about those later. It comes with 2 little wireless remotes, so obviously it has to have a wireless receiver on the machine. Well, the way it's wired, if you follow the diagram, it's hot all the time. That receiver's going to be on all the time, which, even though it probably only draws maybe 5 to 20 milliamps, eventually it's going to drain the battery on your machine. So let it sit out there a month or 2 in cold weather, guarantee you're going to have a dead battery. So I rewired that and made it switched. So far it's working fine. We're out here today testing it. Let's go and do some testing. Okay, well, I was gonna hook onto this big tree, still pretty green. Looks like the wind or ice blew it over. I know it was probably more than what this winch could handle, but I wanted to give it a try. Well, while I pulled this out, I think our test just ended abruptly here. I'm not sure what happened. Well, that's a first for me. I don't think we were at the end. We might have been fairly close. Let me look. Okay, so what happened was I came out here to the end of the cable, and I wasn't really pulling that hard. I was just wheeling it out, and it snapped off on me. The end of it's still in there. There's about that much left. So there's our failure. The winch itself was working great. It didn't get warm. Anything I'd done out here, pulling it up the hill, dragging that log, operating it continuously, that all did fine. But the rope, the synthetic rope that was in here, broke right where it attaches. There's a little bit left, but yeah, it broke right there. It may have had a loop in it or something when it rolled up the last time. I'm not sure. Something created a weak point right there. That's the first time I've ever had that happen, and I've had synthetic rope on the last 3 or 4 winches I've had, besides the one that was on here. The original winch on here was a cable, and then I switched it to synthetic, and never had a problem with it. Used it lots with the snowplow, and really never had a problem with it. So I'm not sure what to think about that. So there you go. It's nearly dark. Hopefully on the way out I don't need a winch. I don't think I do. It's pretty much all downhill. So let's just recap the winch here. The winch itself has been working fine. I put it on about a month and a half ago, and I've been using it around the place a little bit. Not a lot of use, but enough to know that it was working fairly well. I came up here, gave it a little bit harder use today, pulled this four-wheeler up the hill, drug a couple trees. I got a couple off camera that I was just playing around with before I set the cameras up with. The winch never got warm. It operates very quietly. It's a quiet winch. It really surprised me how quiet it was compared to the old winch that was on this machine. That's all good, but the rope needs some work. Yeah, it broke. The last pull I was going to make with it, I rolled it out, and I knew I was getting pretty close to the end of it, and I wasn't pulling real hard. I just let it roll out, and it just came out of the winch. So I'd like to do a little more testing. I was hoping to do a little more testing with it tonight on the way home, but that's not going to happen. And I'm really not looking forward to taking that back out of it. That thing was a bear getting that thing in there. And it looks like I'm going to have to take it out to get a new rope back in there. Fortunately, I've got a spare one at home. I usually keep one of those around. The winch itself seems to be good. I can't say too much about that rope. But anyway, it is what it is. Overall, I like the winch. I don't know what the price point is with this compared to the Warn winch that was on here. I know this isn't awfully expensive. I think it's probably, do I want to say it's a good value for the money when I pulled the rope out? I don't know. Up until that point, I would have said yes, it was a good value for the money. I don't like the switch. I still don't like the switch. Even after using it up here, it feels gritty. I don't like it. The handheld thing, I don't know how much use I'll get out of that. I thought one of the great uses for that thing would be when you're winching back in and you need to put tension on the cable. And when you're by yourself, a lot of times that's hard to do and get it wheeled back in correctly. And that thing, I thought, oh, this would be the best thing in the world for that. Well, when you get out towards the end of the cable length, the winch, the controller kind of cuts in and out. It's tink, 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 tink as it comes back in. So it's pretty lurchy until you get within about maybe 30 feet or a little less feet of the machine. Then it works fine. Then it goes like it should. Any further than that, it pulses real bad. I don't like that about the wireless control, and I haven't found a good spot to store the wireless control on this machine yet. I thought I would find a spot for it if it worked well, and for mainly just bringing the rope back in at the end of your winching session. But I don't know. I'm not sure what to think about it at the moment. So, like I said, the winch itself was working pretty good, but yeah. I'll give you guys an update down the road on what I think once I get a new rope on. My mouth's a little cold. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. I don't know if we can see this. Right there's another spot that it started to come apart. Well, about 5 feet out from the end of the line. Well, here we are, back in the shop. A few days later, snowing like crazy outside. I need to get a winch rope cable put on here so I can snow plow. I'm really not looking forward to this. I had to fight this so much to get this on here. And earlier in the video I mentioned these bolts were too short. They were way too short. I had to go to town to buy some other bolts. The ones that came with it, you might get one thread in there, and that's about all you could get. So here goes nothing. There was a little piece hanging out here before. It must have fell off on my way back down. Too small, too big. That really wasn't in there a long ways. I'm wondering if it just pulled out of there. I've had this rope, oh man, I don't know even how long. Several years been sitting around, just waiting for one to break. This is what came with it. There's the flat spot where the Allen screw was sitting. I think it just pulled back through. Didn't actually break. So being this looks like it just pulled back through, I am going to take some heat shrink and put on this and put that back through there, and we'll give it another go. New knife I got for Christmas, Bear Ops. Don't know much about the company, but really like this knife. The main reason I'm putting some heat shrink on there is just so I can get it back through that hole on the winch. Once it's through, I'm going to undo a little bit of this, fray it out, and burn it so it creates a knot there. So hopefully it can't pull through again. This knife, while we're waiting for that to cool, I'm so used to having knives that are so dull you could probably hand them to your kids and let them play with them. This thing is so sharp compared to most of my knives that It's been a little challenge for me. I try not to cut my finger off with it. As you saw in the end of that video, I did have to hook this to a tree and pull on it to get it freed up because it had all bunched up on one side, which is not really uncommon. But I know somebody's going to ask, is that the reason this pulled out, as I went clear to the end? And the answer is no. I stopped at least 20 feet short of the end. And I was hand pulling this out, trying to get over that bigger tree when this just fell out on the ground. And I just came out from underneath there is what it looks like. I'm not really sure how tight to get this, whether there's a plate there. I'm worried that this is just the screw running down against this. I hope not. I hope there's a plate in there. It's just putting pressure on it. And I know there's a big ball sticking up here, but I'm willing to live with that if we can get this thing together again. Let's see how that goes. Okay, let's let the struggle begin. Okay, now the hardest one. See if you can see the problem. Those floating nuts, there's lined up right about there. You can see it drops down, and it's really, really hard to get that lined up. There we go. Okay, we're repaired now. Getting that new rope on there took a little bit over a half hour. Not too bad. Well, I shouldn't say new rope. I just put the old rope back on. It just pulled out of the holder in there. So let's give it a go. I'll just be really careful when I pull that thing completely out. That looks like a little bit of a weak point. If you buy one of these, I would suggest pulling that rope completely out. Look at how it's attached. Make sure it's in there good before going out in the woods and finding out you've got a problem. So with that, I'm going to go put the snowplow on and start plowing snow.